Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending this tech talk. We're just going to give people a few extra minutes here, see if anyone trickles in, and then we will get started. In the meantime, feel free to pop any questions that you have during the talk in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. And Bruce, would you like to get to any questions at the end of the talk or raise them as they come up? Which would you prefer? All right. All right. So either way, whatever you're most comfortable with. But other than that, there will be a short survey after the talk, but before the Q&A, which you guys can fill out. It's only a couple questions about how informative you found this presentation and if you would like to see any particular topics in the future. If you could fill that out, we would really appreciate it. Other than that, I think we're going to give them one more minute here. Yeah, you sound great. Yeah. All right. Let me get this started. All right, everyone. So thank you for coming to this week's Tech Talk. Welcome. The library's Data Hub holds these talks in an attempt to expose the University of Idaho community to topics and issues and tools that will help them produce their own scholarly work. And to that end, this week we have Bruce Godfrey, GIS librarian, here to talk about how to set up QGIS to access ArcGIS online. So Bruce, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll begin. Okay, as Norm mentioned, we're going to talk about setting up QGIS to access ArcGIS online, and I've just got a handful of slides to get us started. And then we'll go into actually going through this, and you're welcome to follow these steps as we go through them, or just kind of follow along and see if this is going to be helpful and set it up at a later date if that chooses to be the case. So why might you want to do this? This is really from a QGIS perspective. You might want to collaborate or share vector data while you're working in QGIS. So QGIS users at the U of I can leverage our ArcGIS Online teaching and research instance to host vector data for sharing and collaboration. So it could be useful in that manner. It might come in handy for you personally if you use multiple computers with QGIS, another type of GeoServer. You might want multiple QGIS users to access the same data. So you can accomplish that here. Or you might want to store data in one place for QGIS and ArcGIS users to collaborate. So the general steps here, there's really three to get this started. There's, kind of three big containers. There's several steps you have to go through in each, and we'll walk through each of those. But first, in a web browser, we have to create an application item on ArcGIS Online, which enables us to sign in using our Vandal NetID to ArcGIS Online within QGIS. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to go to a web browser. We're going to create this application item initially. And then we go over to QGIS and we create this authentication configuration. And then lastly, we'll create a connection to our ArcGIS Online instance that will enable us to browse and access data hosted in ArcGIS Online. The first time here after we establish this, if you're going through it on your computer, you'll have to restart QGIS to get this set up. I've done it on my machine. I won't do that restart for the demo, but if you follow through the instructions, the last step will just be to restart. So I'm part of a administrators group for instances of ArcGIS Online across different academic institutions, and a gentleman at University of Michigan within their IT group created a really good set of instructions for how to do this. And really all we need to do is replace our subdomain U Idaho, where their instance of UMICH, UMich, is in the instructions. So it seems like following their instructions without duplicating everything is a good way to go. And there's a link in the presentation that I sent out for folks to follow this. And then again, we'll just replace our subdomain U Idaho in I think there's 3 places maybe where it's mentioned in the instructions for doing this. So does anyone have any questions to that point? I'm going to jump out end the slideshow, and we'll go over to the instructions and take a look. Does anybody have any questions to that point? Feel free to drop them in the chat. Close this down. And then so at about noon, if you registered by noon, you would have gotten a link to the presentation that has a link to the website at Michigan, where it has the detailed information on these steps. And it gives us a little background on how to do this and those 4 broad categories that we'll jump into. Again, this should work for, any newer instance, last year's instances of QGIS, anything on a Mac, Windows, or Linux, it should end up working. I'm running a current version of QGIS, and it worked just on Windows here, but the document was done in Mac, so it should be universal in that way. Again, so this is going to be accessing off of, show you how to access data from ArcGIS Online. So you'll be, going across the internet to do this, and you can decide if you have connectivity that supports that or how large a data set you want to work with. All things to kind of consider as we go through this. What's the last thing I was going to mention on that? Oh yeah, what we're talking about today is for vector data sets from ArcGIS Online. Currently, I haven't seen examples of this working for rasters that you can serve through ArcGIS Online. So keep that in mind at this point, that it's going to be for working with vector data out there. So the first thing we need to do is create an application in ArcGIS Online. And this is going to set up a way for us to log into ArcGIS Online from QGIS. So in our web browser here, they have it linked for UMichigan here, but we go to https://uidaho.maps.arcgis.com. And if you've been there before, you're familiar with ArcGIS Online and managing content in there. You may not have created an application item before, but we're going to go through how to do that here. So if you sign in with your Vandal NetID when prompted, is this blocking the, let me minimize this.
No, they can't see that.
Oh, they can't see. Okay, good. If you go into ArcGIS Online and sign in, you land at the organization page. You'll want to navigate over to the content tab. And in the content tab, you have the ability to create folders to store information, or you can just create this in the root. I set up a little folder called QGIS applications here, and I've already created this mobile application. But if we follow through the instructions, the first thing you can do is content, and click on the new item button and select the application type. So here we're going to click on the new item button, and we're going to select this application item here. So again, there's all different types of items that you can host in ArcGIS Online, feature layers and imagery layers, but here we're going to select this application item here. And it's going to give us a little form to go ahead and fill out. Following the instructions here, we're going to select that radio button that says mobile. And in here, in the URL, it's not critical here. You have to enter something, so they recommend entering QGIS.org. It's not used in this particular case since it's QGIS, but we got to enter a URL in there. So putting in QGIS.org will work. So once you select that item, radio button for mobile, put it in QGIS and push the next button, we're going to put in some documentation about this specific application. In the title here, you can call it anything you want. QGIS is by default what you can end up titling it if you want. You can change this later too. It's just metadata about this application. You can choose it in the root folder to store this in the root folder, or you can place it in a specific folder like I did here, where I created a folder called QGIS application, an example, and I put it in here, and my title was QGIS application. And then you can store tags on it like QGIS. If you have a lot of items in there and you want to search and filter, you can put keywords that you can discover that with. And then the summary here, you can call it, you can put in any summary, but something that's, you know, a little bit informative, that, you know, gives you an idea of a quick look if you're browsing through this. And they put in the example OAuth 2 for QGIS, which OAuth is an open authorization that you can use. It's an open standard for client server authentication and authorization. So that's a pretty good summary just to drop in there. And then you can click that save button, and you'll end up with this item in ArcGIS Online, similar to what I have here. And I called it QGIS application. So I have this item now created in ArcGIS Online. I added a little other descriptive information in here that you can certainly do after you create this and do more full documentation if you like. After that, we're going to need to do a little more configuration within the settings. So once we get this set up, we're going to go over to the settings button on the upper right for this item page. And once you click in that settings item, you can enable delete protection on if you want on this item. I went ahead and did that as just kind of as a safety feature. And then we want to enter some specific information in here. Under registering the application. So we're going to click the button that says register application. And the next part of the form, we're going to enter a few URLs in here, which you can copy from the link. We're going to enter the redirect URLs of localhost. And then secondly, we're going to enter http://127.0.0.1 and then colon 7070 for the port. And then we're also going to do HTTPS for that same address, ://127.0.0.1 and then colon 770 again for the port. We'll leave the application environment set to multiple. That should be by default. You can set that URL in for default should be for QGIS. And you're going to click the register button, which is going to register this information in the system. And then now that it's registered, there's going to be two fields in there you're going to see that have a client ID and a client secret. And those two are items. You can leave it open here. You're going to need those text strings, alphanumeric text strings for QGIS to authenticate here. So you'll be able to copy them from here when we go into QGIS to set up QGIS to access this. So that will complete the very first part. I'm going to cancel out of my section here and go back to the overview. And I'm going to go back to my content. So if online, if you're following along on this, you should have one new item that is an application type that you'll see listed in your content that has those details that we just put in. Everybody online good? Thumbs up or anything in the chat? Anybody stuck on any part of that? They do a nice job with the documentation. Anything, Norm? Look good?
Got a couple thumbs up, but no
Okay.
questions.
Okay, great. So let's move over to QGIS then. And probably for folks online, keep that, either capture that client ID and that tag in a little text file, or keep your browser open because you will need to access those as we go through the ID and the secret. So now we're going to go on to step 2 of 4. We're going to create an ArcGIS authentication configuration here. So we're going to configure QGIS to be able to use the ArcGIS online login that we just created above. So if you have QGIS open, you're going to go up to, from the settings menu, select options. So I'm going to go in here to Q, and I've already got this set up, but I'll be able to show it. So if we go to settings, options, and if you haven't established any of these, yours will be empty here. But I'll go ahead and click into mine. You'll see a, oops, excuse me. You will see a menu that looks like this with no configurations currently established. So you're going to add a new configuration. So you're going to select authentication down the left side of the menu, and you're going to click the green button, the green plus sign, to add a new authentication here. So again, left menu authentication, click the green button. And then at this point, if you have a master password for QGIS, you can just go ahead and enter it. If you don't have one, you'll need to create it. Each time you access or try to access ArcGIS online in QGIS for the first time in a session, you'll want to enter this. And you know, keep track of what that password is. It seems mine right now just stores it when I come in. But go ahead and set up, either enter your credentials if you have it for a master password in QGIS, or for this configuration, you're required to make up one and enter it here. So you want to do that. And then we'll start populating some of these elements in the form. So after you've entered that master password authentication, that master authentication password, you'll see the configuration come up, and you will see there's a detailed explanation of each of these items, which you can copy some of these text if you have the web page open. And the form looks like this. So they did it for U Michigan. I'll show you what mine looks like here. So I called mine UI ArcGIS Online, and then just U of I AGO for the little ID. And then followed their instructions to set this up. So you want to choose OAuth 2 for the authentication type here from the dropdown. The grant flow here will be authorization code. And in the request URL, this is one place we need to change that subdomain. So over here in the instructions, it says umish.maps.arcgis.com. You can copy this full URL, just change it to uidaho.maps.arcgis.com. So here, instead of umish, I put in uidaho. Same thing with the token URL. It gets uidaho in there. And that's the only small string that you have to, have to change there. Okay, then it's gonna, the redirect URL should be by default here. It should be on port 7070. And then keep hitting this. This is where you're going to need your client ID and client secret. So each of you will have online there, will have a different client ID and secret here that you'll want to copy and paste from your text editor, or if you're grabbing it off your web browser, you could go ahead and enter it right in there. Just copy and paste them in there. Access method is header. And in the token header, you could enter this string. I left it blank before too, but I would enter x-esri-authorization. Timeout, you can leave at 30 seconds. So you should have a page that looks like this in your form to be able to populate and then push the save button. So choose a name, choose an ID. I think it has to be 7 characters in there. Enter the request URL for uidaho.maps.arcgis.com as well as the token URL. The redirect URL by default with port 7070. Copy in your client ID and your client secret. And then the access method of header, x-esri-authorization for the token header, and request timeout can just take the default at 30 seconds. So after you do that, I'll cancel out. You should have a new authentication within QGIS once you hit the save button there, that should look similar to what you see on the screen with your ID, your name, and your type. Everybody online good? To that point, that completes step 2 of 4 that we had to do to establish this connection from QGIS to ArcGIS Online. So now we can move on to step 3 of 4. We're going to actually create the QGIS connection to ArcGIS Online. So we can access these data that are hosted in ArcGIS Online. So we're going to go in QGIS again. We're going to go across the top to the layer menu and select Data Source Manager. So yes, I'm going to cancel out of here. And we're going to go to Layer and Data Source Manager. And I actually already have this in here, but you'll end up creating a new one. So you will click on the new button to create a new server connection here directly to ArcGIS Online. So from the left-hand side, you'll see ArcGIS REST server, and you're going to click new there near the top of the window. So again, left-hand side, ArcGIS REST server, and click the button new. And then we're going to have some more information to enter in here to establish the connection to this server. So you're going to give this a name. Again, this is arbitrary here. It could be whatever name you want to put in there. We're going to put in the service URL that's listed here, services1.arcgis.com there. We are going to put in community endpoint URL. Again, we're going to swap out the subdomain for Idaho. Keep the rest of it identical. The same thing with the content endpoint URL. We're going to swap out UMISH for Idaho again. And you can copy and paste those from here. So it should look just like this. Your name would be Idaho ArcGIS Online. Again, just swapping out those subdomains here. So on the configuration tab, you should be able to choose your configuration for authentication that you set up. So it should say U Idaho ArcGIS Online OAuth 2, and you should be able to select that from the list. So it's going to go to this URL. It's going to use this authentication and store those credentials. And at that point, you should be able to click OK and then close the data source manager. So that's step 3 of setting up the connection. So first, we created the application in ArcGIS Online, again, just to review. Then we created this configuration in QGIS for the authentication. And then we created a connection in ArcGIS to our ArcGIS Online instance. So now you should be able to close QGIS and then reopen QGIS. So go ahead and quit out of it and open it up. And let's pretend that I quit out of this one. I'm going to cancel out of my connection here. And I've opened QGIS back up. And what you should see in your browser list on top of all your local data or other data sets you can get to, like OpenStreetMap like you use, or other resources that you have locally or other servers. Under the ArcGIS REST servers, you should see a new item there that's in your list, U Idaho or U of I ArcGIS Online, or whatever name you gave it. It should be the connection. So when I click on this, this is when it's going to confirm the authentication for me. So I'm going to click on it. And I'm going to go down. It's going to show you a list of groups and services. And groups, if you're familiar with ArcGIS Online, are a way to organize content and share with other members and provide editing across other members, that type of thing. Services will be all the vector data sets that you have access to that have been granted, either ones you own, ones that folks have shared with you via groups, ones that folks have shared across the organization. So there's likely hundreds and hundreds of in here. It gets a little unwieldy to look through. So I usually recommend looking in the groups. If you're going to do this, set up a group, put your items in there. You'll be able to get to them quicker, but we'll show a little example of what that looks like. So if I double click groups, going to open up the browser and it's going to ask me to request permission for QGIS to access it with my account. And yes, I set this up. That's my application. I'm going to allow it to go in there. And the verification finished. And I can go back to QGIS. And now it's going to show me my list of groups in here. So I have a bunch of different groups set up. One of which being is QGIS demo. And I have a layer in here, and I have a data set in here that's shared across the organization for the experimental forest. But this is a little, you might just have one group, or you might not have any groups set up yet. If you go to services, it's going to be a pretty unwieldy list of everything that's shared across our organization by all thousands of members. So it'll take a little time to load. Once it does, you'll see it's a pretty big list of all the items that are shared out there with a whole bunch of, file names that might not be so friendly. So if you think about, in ArcGIS Pro, you can filter these and you can get friendly names, and you have a lot more ability to search and navigate around. With QGIS right now, it's a little more limited in that way. So the way you organize the data is going to be important for how easily it'll be found and you'll interact with it. So at this point, I have this hosted feature layer that I created in ArcGIS Online. So in QGIS now, I'm able to access this hosted feature layer, And I'll just go ahead and add it over here to the map. You can see the 4 little points come up. And so these data are a hosted feature layer in ArcGIS Online, right? They're not stored on my machine. I'm accessing them across the internet. And I'm the owner of this item. And so for one you own or another data set, if someone's granted you the ability to edit it, we could add features to this or edit it here in QGIS, right? So we can toggle on editing, and we can go ahead and add a point feature, and I can save that item. And so it stored that new feature in ArcGIS Online. And we're interacting with that as a hosted layer. So if I save it, what that looks like over in ArcGIS Online is this item. If I look at the details, it's this layer here that we're accessing now from a client, QGIS, instead of ArcGIS Pro or another ArcGIS Online client. And here are those same features that we're accessing. And those data, there's several objects in there, 5 objects. So we're able to edit it from this client, that hosted feature layer. And then we could grant access to others, through the sharing mechanisms of ArcGIS Online. Also, like for example, this UI experimental forest boundary is shared with our organization at the U of I by the director of the experimental forest. So here we could add that. It's going to be a different projection, so it's going to give me transformation information. But I can bring those features in. You'll see I don't have the ability to add features to that layer because I'm not an editor of that layer, but we can interact with it similar and in ways that we can just view it. So maybe we show the labels. I need to come off of that. Maybe we show the labels on there, and we can see those boundaries and that type of thing. So rather than storing the data locally again, if you're a user who might be accessing with QGIS from various computers, you could store these data sets, these feature classes in ArcGIS Online's hosted feature layers, and either edit ones you own or have permission to edit, or stream features in from services that others at the U of I have shared. Again, this won't work for raster data. I haven't seen an example of it to date for raster data. Hopefully soon, at some point, it'll be available. And again, those items are stored up here. And, outside of QGIS is where you'll set the sharing and the permissions, similar to the way you set those on other items in ArcGIS Online. So you're still going to have interaction with ArcGIS Online through the web browser to manage, sharing. If it's going to be for more than just you, you'll need to set those permissions on this hosted feature layer, depending on how you want folks to get at it. If you share it at an organizational level, like you see for these boundaries of the experimental forest, where you can bring them into Q. But that concludes what I had. It's an example of, using our Vandal NetID and using QGIS as a client to access hosted feature layers in ArcGIS Online that we might want to share with other people, or we might just want to store it there and be able to access, from different computers. So if you followed along in this presentation, those instructions are very detailed from Michigan, and just changing that subdomain is really the only change we need to make to get it to work for Idaho. After this presentation concludes, and we work on the video, we'll send out a recording of this. If you have questions, you can certainly always reach out to me you know, after this event, or right now we can open it up for any questions in the chat or just on audio.